In a stunning political clash that has sent shockwaves through Westminster, Nigel Farage has unleashed a scathing attack on two of the Conservative Party's key figures, Foreign Secretary James Cleverly and Immigration Minister Robert Jenrick. The explosive outburst has ignited a fierce debate over the Conservative Party's ability to deliver on critical reforms, and Farage's critique strikes at the heart of what many believe is a growing divide between the government and the people. This fiery exchange, packed with accusations and political tension, could mark a turning point in Britain's political landscape. Stick around to see how this all plays out, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more explosive updates on British politics. Nigel Farage, renowned for his no-holds-barred political style, is back in the headlines after delivering a blistering critique of Conservative leaders James Cleverly and Robert Jenrick. Farage's comments, made during a fiery discussion on GB News, accused the Conservative government of failing to push through meaningful reforms that would address the concerns of ordinary Britons. The crux of his argument is that the Tory leadership has become disconnected from the public, particularly on key issues like immigration, sovereignty, and the broader reform agenda that was promised after Brexit. Farage's most scathing remarks were directed at Robert Jenrick, the immigration minister, who has been at the centre of the government's response to the ongoing immigration crisis. Farage blasted Jenrick's handling of the situation, accusing him of failing to get a grip on the issue. According to Farage, the Conservative government's inability to control the country's borders is a direct betrayal of the promises made during the Brexit campaign. He argued that the government's failure to deliver on these promises is driving voters away in droves, particularly those who supported Brexit in the hope of tighter immigration controls. Robert Jenrick is failing in his duty to the British people, Farage declared during the broadcast. He went on to say that the Conservative Party has lost its way on immigration, one of the key issues that secured their mandate in the post-Brexit political climate. He emphasised that the rise in illegal migration, coupled with the government's perceived inaction, is fuelling discontent not only among voters, but also within the Conservative Party's own ranks. Farage also targeted James Cleverly, the Foreign Secretary, accusing him of prioritising internal party politics over the needs of the electorate. Cleverly, who is responsible for overseeing the UK's foreign relations, has been criticised for not pushing hard enough for domestic reforms that could help the Conservative Party reconnect with its voter base. Farage argued that Cleverly and his colleagues in the government are more concerned with maintaining their positions of power than with delivering on the promises they made to the British people. Cleverly and his peers are more interested in keeping their jobs than serving the people who put them there, Farage said. He warned that this growing disconnect between the government and its voters is creating fertile ground for parties like Reform UK, which are increasingly being seen as a viable alternative to the Tories. Farage stressed that if the Conservative Party doesn't change its course quickly, it could face a catastrophic loss of support in the next general election. At the core of Farage's argument is his long-standing belief that the Conservative Party has squandered the opportunities presented by Brexit. Farage, who was instrumental in driving the campaign for the UK's departure from the European Union, has always been a staunch advocate for Britain's sovereignty and independence on the world stage. He has consistently called for more radical reforms to ensure that Britain remains a global leader post-Brexit. However, he feels that the current Conservative leadership has been too slow to implement these changes, leaving the country vulnerable to political fragmentation and dissatisfaction among voters. As speculation grows that Farage could formally align himself with Reform UK, a party that has positioned itself as the defender of true Brexit values, the pressure on the Conservative Party continues to mount. Farage has not confirmed any formal involvement with the party, but his vocal support for its policies and his increasing criticism of the Tory leadership suggest that an alliance is not out of the question. This potential shift could further destabilise the Conservative Party, which is already grappling with internal divisions and a decline in public support. Farage's outspoken attack on Jenrick and Cleverly has reignited fears within the Conservative Party that they could lose significant ground to right-wing competitors like Reform UK. With the next general election on the horizon, the Tory leadership will need to make critical decisions about how to address these concerns and whether to pursue more radical reforms to retain their voter base. The question is, will the party heed Farage's warnings, or will it continue down a path that risks alienating its core supporters? In another development that highlights the growing unrest within the Conservative Party, Laura Trott, a rising Tory MP, has also voiced her concerns about the current direction of the party. Trott, who is a strong advocate for reform, recently called out her own party's leadership for not doing enough to connect with voters who feel increasingly left behind. Speaking during a political panel, Trott emphasised the need for the Conservative Party to adapt quickly if it hopes to retain power. She pointed to the cost of living crisis, stagnating wages, and ongoing issues with public services as key areas where the government has failed to meet voter expectations. Trott warned that unless the party takes swift action to address these concerns, it risks losing even more support to populist parties like Reform UK. "We cannot afford to ignore the voices of the people who put us in power," Trott said. Her comments have struck a chord with many within the party who believe that the Conservative leadership is not doing enough to modernise and reconnect with its traditional voter base. Trott's remarks reflect a growing sense of urgency within the Conservative Party. Many MPs are calling for a change in direction, arguing that the party needs to focus on delivering tangible results for voters if it wants to fend off challenges from the right. With the general election approaching, the pressure on Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and his team to deliver reforms is greater than ever. Meanwhile, Robert Jenrick has attempted to downplay Nigel Farage's influence and dismissed the notion that Farage could pose a real threat to the Conservative Party. In a recent interview, Jenrick argued that while Farage remains a significant figure in British politics, his ability to shape the future of the country's political landscape is limited. Farage talks a big game, but the reality is that the Conservative Party remains the dominant force on the right, Jenrick said. He pointed to the Conservative Party's majority in Parliament as evidence that the Tories are still the party of choice for most right-wing voters. Jenrick also dismissed the idea that Reform UK could mount a serious challenge in the next general election, claiming that their support remains limited to a small fringe of disillusioned voters. However, despite Jenrick's confidence, the rise of Reform UK cannot be ignored. The party has gained significant traction in recent months, particularly among voters who feel that the Conservative Party has failed to deliver on its promises. Farage's vocal support for the party has only added to its momentum, raising the stakes for the Conservative leadership. Nigel Farage's explosive confrontation with Conservative leaders James Cleverly and Robert Jenrick has brought to light the deepening divisions within Britain's right-wing politics. As Farage pushes for more radical reforms and criticises the government's handling of key issues like immigration and political accountability, the Conservative Party faces mounting pressure from both within its ranks and from rival parties like Reform UK. The growing influence of parties like Reform UK, coupled with internal calls for reform from figures like Laura Trott, suggests that the Conservative Party is at a crossroads. Will the Tories take bold action to reconnect with their voters and deliver the reforms that were promised in the wake of Brexit? Or will they continue to lose ground to their populist rivals? As the battle for the future of British politics continues, all eyes are on how the Conservative leadership will respond. Will they rise to the challenge, or will figures like Farage further erode their dominance? Be sure to stay tuned as this political drama unfolds, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more updates on this explosive story.